The series begins with a little girl running away from her terrifying house, sprinting through the gardens until she reaches the main road. There, she desperately tries to stop any passing car to take her away. In another part of the city, Suzanne, a psychiatrist, receives news that a strange girl has arrived at the hospital, her back covered in blood and refusing to speak. Suzanne rushes to the hospital where she's in charge of psychiatric treatment for patients. She tries to talk to the girl, who turns out to be the same one who escaped from the creepy house. But the girl is terrified and doesn't even want to say her name. Suzanne comforts her, trying to make her feel safe and assure her that no one can hurt her. Since the hospital needs a name to write in her file, they temporarily call her Trauma. A nurse takes the girl to finish the medical tests, but when it's time for her injection, Trauma refuses to let anyone touch her and suddenly becomes extremely violent. Suzanne is called in quickly to calm her down, and it works. Trauma relaxes, sits beside Suzanne, and even falls asleep on her shoulder. Sometime later, a strange-looking man wearing a police uniform arrives at the hospital, searching for someone. Suzanne sees him and asks who he's looking for, and he describes someone matching Trauma's exact appearance, introducing himself as the sheriff of the county where she came from. But Suzanne doesn't trust him. She tells him he needs to have a parent, relative, or court order to take the girl. The sheriff gives her a sinister smile before leaving. Suzanne rushes to check on Trauma and finds her asleep. Then she heads back home, where she lives with her husband and their 3 children, Jules, Helen, and Danny. Helen is the oldest daughter, very popular at school, with lots of friends, and everyone loves her. Jules, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. She gets bullied every day and doesn't have any friends at all. As for Danny, Suzanne has adopted her and treats her like her own daughter. Suzanne's husband works as a real estate agent, loves her deeply, and together they have a happy family. The next morning, Suzanne gets ready for work while her husband, in a rush, tells them he's finally going to sell the house he built himself. Suzanne encourages him and feels happy because they had taken loans to build it. She leaves with her 3 kids, drops them off at school, and then heads to the hospital. There, she learns that the hospital has to transfer Trauma somewhere else since her treatment is complete and there's no room left for her. Suzanne feels very upset because she believes Trauma is still in danger and shouldn't be left alone. The nurse tells her she tried to contact every family and care facility in town, but no one would take her because of her age. Suzanne starts thinking about what she can do and decides to talk to Trauma one last time, just to learn her name. But, as usual, Trauma stays silent. Suzanne leaves the room sadly, but suddenly, Trauma finally speaks. She says her real name, May. Suzanne feels relieved and happy, deciding to take May home with her. She doesn't push her for more details, and later notices handcuff marks on May's wrists, which May tries to hide. Suzanne reassures her, promising that she'll never let anyone hurt her again. They go home together, and Suzanne's family warmly welcomes May. That night, everyone gathers for dinner, and as they begin to eat, May asks if they can pray first. She closes her eyes, thanks the Lord for the food, and at the end of her prayer she says, "Hail the King of Demons." Everyone gets confused and looks at each other, but May doesn't notice and thinks it's normal. After dinner, she goes up to her room, which used to be Jules's, and thanks Jules for helping her. She compliments Jules's dress, saying it's beautiful, and Jules thanks her warmly. But suddenly, May lowers her head and apologizes for complimenting her, asking Jules not to tell anyone. Jules is completely confused and tells her that people are usually happy when someone compliments them, and no one ever apologizes for being kind. May thanks her and returns to her room. Standing in front of the mirror, she looks at her back, revealing a pentagram carved deeply into her skin. Later, May starts trying to befriend Jules, clearly admiring her and wanting to be like her. It becomes obvious that May has no friends and no social life. The next day, the hospital administration finally finds a foster home for May. Suzanne goes with her to check the new place, but when May sees a cross hanging on the wall, she gets startled and looks terrified. As she walks around the house, some kids playing nearby accidentally throw their ball toward her, but May scares them so much that they run away in fear. After Suzanne finishes the house tour, she and May leave, and behind them, the cross suddenly turns upside down on its own without anyone touching it. Later, Suzanne takes May to the shopping mall and buys her a lot of new things for her new home. While they're shopping, Suzanne gets a phone call, and when she turns around, May is gone. She searches everywhere for her until she finds her outside the mall. May apologizes and admits she doesn't want to go to the new house because there's no safe place to hide there, and that she only feels safe when she's with Suzanne. Feeling compassion for her, Suzanne decides to let May stay in her home until she can find a better foster place. May feels overjoyed and returns home with Suzanne. There, May sits with Jules, watching her take photos for the school magazine. She tries to start a conversation, telling Jules how she used to make dolls with her siblings, and keeps talking about many things. But Jules doesn't seem interested. Suddenly, May touches Jules's hair and tells her she loves it. Jules thanks her politely, but feels that May is acting strangely. That night, Suzanne and her husband are in bed when they hear a noise at the door. Her husband quickly gets up to check, but finds no one outside. Still, it's clear someone has been watching them, but has already gone back to their room. The next morning, Suzanne prepares breakfast with her husband's help. Suddenly, a crow crashes violently into the window, shattering the glass. Everyone gets scared and rushes to see what happened. The crow is lying motionless, and Suzanne asks her husband to take it to the bird shelter. He agrees, and May stands beside him, saying the crow's life is about to end. He ignores her comment and drives off, but when he reaches the shelter, it's closed. He leaves the crow in the car and heads to work. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the city detective named Alex, the one assigned to May's case, comes to talk to Suzanne. She refuses to let him speak to May, explaining that the girl is still in shock, and any attempt to make her recall what happened could trigger a relapse. Alex asks Suzanne to call him as soon as May is ready to talk. Later, he decides to visit the area where May was found, on the border of Amman County, a place known for its reclusive and secretive people who rarely interact with outsiders. When Alex arrives, he finds a knife covered in blood and takes it as evidence. Then he follows a path through a farm, noticing footprints on the ground. As he tracks them, he hears a loud chorus of crows and walks toward the sound, until he finds a scarecrow with a pig's head mounted on top. The scarecrow is made of wooden sticks, meant to scare off birds, but the crows have gathered around it because the pig's head is rotted. Alex notices a strange symbol carved onto the wooden frame, but doesn't understand what it means. He walks back to his car and finds the sheriff of the county waiting for him. The sheriff behaves oddly and refuses to give any information about May or her parents' whereabouts. Alex asks why no one reported her missing, and the sheriff says her family is deeply religious and believes she'll come home when she's ready. Alex is confused by his response and tells the sheriff he'll be sending a list of questions for her parents. The sheriff agrees and waits until Alex drives away. That night, Suzanne's husband returns home, and their little daughter asks him about the crow. He tells her not to worry, that he delivered it to the shelter. Later, he goes down to the garage, where the crow is still in the car, now dead. He digs a small hole in the garden to bury it, but when he goes back to get the bird, it's gone. He assumes it flew away and doesn't think much of it. Meanwhile, May is walking alone through the forest, holding the crow in her hands as if it were something sacred. She finds a cut tree trunk, places the crow on it, and draws the same mysterious symbol the detective had seen on the scarecrow. Then she kneels before it, worshiping the dead crow. The story flashes back to the past, showing a little girl running through the woods, chased by a man in a police uniform. She hides up in a tree as the man calls her name, Suzanne, telling her she'll have to come down eventually. It's then revealed that the child is the same Suzanne from the present. Back in the present timeline, it's the day of May's court hearing. Her parents are supposed to attend, but time passes and neither of them shows up, not even a defense attorney. The court decides that May will remain in Suzanne's custody for 90 days. Until a suitable foster home is found, the judge rules that May must also attend school. May is thrilled, especially when she learns she'll be in the same class as Jules. Later, she goes out to eat with Suzanne at a restaurant, where Suzanne apologizes for May's mother not showing up to see her. May's eyes fill with tears as she remembers her mother, whom she loved deeply. The story then flashes back to the past, when May was living with her parents and her many sisters. Late at night, May sits alone in her room when her sisters come in, telling her that she's the chosen one. They look at her with a mix of jealousy, reverence, and fear, but May is the only one who seems sad, crying quietly in terror. Her mother soon enters the room and brings her food, telling her she must eat to have the strength to perform the ritual. May looks at her mother with desperate fear, begging her not to do this, but her mother insists that the chain of sacrifices must continue so that Lucifer will be pleased and the morning star will rise again. She promises May she'll help her as much as she can. Moments later, May's father and the priest arrive. They tie her to a chair as May keeps calling out for her mother. Eventually, her mother returns and gives her a crown made of raven feathers and a potion to drink to ease the pain. Then she asks May's father to untie her, saying May will be obedient. May is placed on what looks like a throne, and a man wearing a robe made of raven feathers stands behind her, raising his hands toward the sky as the ritual begins. May suddenly snaps out of her memory and tells Suzanne she doesn't want to talk about her mother. Suzanne respects her wish, and they return home. That night, Suzanne and her husband decide to go out together, leaving May at home with Jules and Danny, asking them to watch a movie and enjoy the evening. It's May's first time seeing all the electronic devices in the house, since she's never had access to any form of entertainment before. She starts getting closer to Jules, wanting to feel like part of the family. When the movie ends, everyone goes to their rooms, but suddenly Jules hears a strange noise. She gets up and finds May standing right in front of her, which startles her. May is crying and begs Jules not to tell anyone at school where she's from, so they won't bully her. Jules promises to keep it a secret and lets May sleep in her room. The next morning, they go to school together. Jules shows May around and explains how to ignore bullies. Then she introduces her to the editor of the school magazine, Sebastian, whom Jules has a crush on. Since the first issue of the magazine is coming out soon, Sebastian decides to put May on the cover to attract more students to buy it. Jules gets upset because he had promised that spot to her before. Later, May and Jules return home with Suzanne, but May suddenly notices a strange symbol drawn on Suzanne's car. She clearly recognizes it and quickly offers to wash the car. She nervously wipes the mark away, glancing around in fear as she does it. Meanwhile, Suzanne's husband is trying to sell the house. He meets one of the wealthiest women in town, and they go hunting together. He manages to catch a deer and brings it home. Once there, he asks if anyone wants to help him cut it up. May volunteers, but Jules reminds her they have homework to do. May feels genuinely happy. She's not used to this kind of normal family life, and starts imitating everything Jules does. The day ends, and everyone goes to bed except May, who starts remembering her past, the time when the rituals began. A knife appears in her memory, and it's revealed that this was when the pentagram was carved into her back. In the present, May walks into the kitchen, picks up a knife, and starts cutting a piece of meat, slicing it furiously as if she's taking revenge on everything she suffered in the past. Later, May goes into the forest, where it becomes clear she's performing strange rituals. She's gathered Jules's hairbrush, Suzanne's toothbrush, and several other small items that have gone missing from each member of the family. She places them beside the dead crow, draws symbols on the tree trunk, and begins chanting and praying. The next day, Suzanne goes to the hospital and tries to contact Detective Alex to learn what's happened. He tells her he was supposed to meet May's parents that same day, so Suzanne waits for him to finish and then goes to the investigation office at the time when May's parents are expected to arrive. But instead of them, a lawyer shows up, one of the most famous attorneys known for defending religious freedom. Alex is puzzled, wondering how May's father, who's just a simple farmer, could afford such a powerful lawyer. He tries to question him, but the lawyer refuses to reveal any information. He tells Alex that if he had found fingerprints on the knife or any concrete evidence, he'd already have a warrant to arrest May's parents. But since there's no evidence, he's only asking for a voluntary meeting. The lawyer then warns Alex that if he ever asks for another meeting or even hints at it without proof, he'll sue him for harassment, and then leaves. Alex is deeply suspicious of how secretive the lawyer is. He continues researching the meaning of the pentagram symbol carved on May's back and investigates May's family history. Later, he calls Suzanne and tells her that May's family belongs to a religious cult that practices human sacrifices and that their symbol is the pentagram. Suzanne begins her own search and decides to drive to the county herself. When she gets there, she asks a local man about May's family home. The man nervously tells her to go back home immediately. Suzanne suddenly notices a group of people around her, looking hostile, as if they're about to attack. She quickly gets into her car and drives away. Meanwhile, at the police station, Detective Alex decides to keep the Dodd family, May's parents, under surveillance. He goes to one of their factories but finds it abandoned. Instead, he sees a large gathering of townspeople, with one man dressed like a priest but wearing robes of a different color. The group boards a large truck and drives deep into the forest, and Alex follows them while secretly recording everything. They arrive at a place that looks like a church, filled with an even larger crowd of people and another man wearing strange ceremonial robes. Alex finishes recording and returns to the police station, where he asks his assistant to investigate the photos he took of the people at the gathering. She discovers that all of them are listed as owners of companies established back in 1922, but every single one of those companies has no real assets, meaning they're fake corporations created to cover up illegal activity. She also finds out that May's father father himself bought up all the land in the county over the years until he and the residents became completely independent, forming a closed-off area that no outsider can enter. The sheriff is their ally and part of the same organization, which explains why no complaints are ever filed, no matter what happens. Alex realizes that May is extremely important to the Dodd family because her father is the cult's leader himself. At the hospital, Suzanne finds a book about May's cult and calls the author to ask for more information. The author refuses to talk over the phone, sounding terrified, and abruptly ends the call. Suzanne, disturbed by her fear, tracks down the author's address and decides to visit her in person. On the way, she takes her daughter Danny with her. When they arrive at the author's office, the woman nervously tells Suzanne she can't talk about that cult on the phone because she has no idea what they might do to her if she speaks out. Suzanne explains May's situation and how she escaped from the cult. The author warns her to be extremely careful because even if May rejects the cult's practices, its beliefs and rituals are deeply rooted in her mind. She tells Suzanne that the only real solution is to find another survivor, someone who escaped the cult and managed to live a normal, stable life, so May can see it's possible to break the chain being the line of rituals passed down from generation to generation. Suzanne thanks her for her help and drives back home with Danny. On the road, Suzanne notices a car following them, the same one Detective Alex had seen before. She gets scared and nearly crashes, but finally makes it home safely. Once there, she asks May if she knows anyone who managed to escape from the cult. May mentions a man named Eric, and Suzanne feels hopeful again. She goes straight to the police station to meet Alex, tells him everything, and asks him to track down Eric, who seems to be the only known survivor. Afterward, the two talk more personally, and the topic of Suzanne's mother comes up. It's clear their relationship isn't good, and Suzanne refuses to discuss it further before leaving. Back home, Jules prepares the photos she's going to give Sebastian for the school magazine. She takes a few pictures of May, who's never been photographed before, helps her put on a nice dress, and captures some beautiful shots, keeping them for herself. That night, Jules hands over the photos to Sebastian, without realizing that May's pictures are among them. At school, the photos spread everywhere, including the one of May. The students notice the strange mark on her back and crowd around her, asking what it is. May explains that her parents had very strict ways of raising their children and were harsh with her. The students are moved and ask how she managed to escape. May tells them she broke the chain. Everyone assumes she means she gathered her courage and ran away. But in truth, May is referring to breaking the literal chain of rituals. That night, Suzanne and her husband throw a birthday party for Danny. May and Jules sit together, looking at May's photo that was posted on Instagram. Suzanne notices it and is shocked to see the mark on May's back, clearly visible. She immediately scolds Jules and demands that she delete the photo. Then she calls the school principal and insists they remove it completely. May apologizes and admits she was the one who sent the picture because she wanted to show everyone how talented Jules is as a photographer. Suzanne tells her she can't do that. It's dangerous for her safety. Jules bursts into tears after being yelled at by her mother. Helen tries to comfort her, telling her that May isn't the right friend for her. But Jules snaps back, telling Helen to stay out of her business, accusing her of being ashamed of her at school, especially since she's dating the most popular guy there and refuses to even say hi to her in public. Jules storms off and leaves. That night, Jules goes to bed while May stays awake. Suddenly, Jules hears the sound of someone opening the door. She looks out the window and sees May leaving the house, holding a white rose and whispering the phrase, "breaking the chain," in a strange tone. Jules runs after her and tries to calm her down. May breaks down crying, saying she broke the chain and now everyone will suffer because of it. Jules reassures her that everyone will be fine without her, but May insists she has to go back because she's special. Jules tells her she can be special here, anywhere she wants, and gently takes her back inside the house to calm her. As they enter, it's revealed that someone has been watching May the entire time from the same car that once followed Suzanne. The next day, Suzanne is doing the laundry when she suddenly finds May's nightgown beside the washing machine. It's the same one May was wearing when she went outside in the rain. Suzanne asks her about it, and May says she only went out to close the garden gate, which is why she got wet. But Suzanne doesn't believe her and later questions Jules privately. Jules tells her everything that happened with May the night before. Suzanne explains that May was raised to believe in specific symbols and rituals, and that her subconscious is still filled with those beliefs. Because Because of that, seeing or thinking about those symbols might trigger strange behavior without her even realizing it. Jules feels emotional hearing this, and her sympathy for May grows stronger. She starts feeling even more protective of her. Meanwhile, May stands again by the tree trunk where she performs her rituals. She's placed pictures of the family and several of their personal belongings around it. Kneeling, she prays, asking for her offering to be accepted and for her dreams to come true. Suddenly, Suzanne shows up and asks what she's doing. May is startled, quickly hiding the tree trunk, and nervously says she was just praying to God. Suzanne asks her about Eric, the one who escaped from the cult, and what would happen to her if she ever went back home. May says she was very young when Eric escaped, but she remembers seeing his parents hanging from a tree in front of her eyes as part of a ritual. She tells Suzanne that if she returns home, the same thing that happened to Mary will happen to her too. May explains that many years ago, there were two brothers named Caleb and Seamus Dodd, the most famous men in the entire town, a town that had been consumed by famine and poverty. She says that during that time, Caleb and Seamus worshipped the god Yahweh, and that Yahweh led them to America. But despite their prayers, the famine followed them wherever they went. Crops withered, animals died from hunger, and even small children began to perish from starvation. While Seamus stayed devoted to God, Caleb heard a sign, a message from a new messenger who appeared in the form of a speaking crow. The crow revealed to him that the path from darkness to light could only be achieved by following the light of Lucifer, who would grant them everything they desired in exchange for sacrifices. Only then, it said, would their prayers be heard and answered. At that time, Seamus dies, and everyone begins to follow the god Lucifer, except for Seamus's widow, Mary Dodd, who is heartbroken over her husband's death. The crow then appears to Caleb, telling him that Mary is special, and that to preserve her purity and innocence, she must offer herself as a sacrifice. Mary is branded with the pentagram on her back, and vows to marry the first prophet who appears. She devotes her entire life to serving the cult, and eventually sacrifices herself for them. Caleb names the cult Shalak Dandal, meaning the house of the devil. They create their own sacred book, known as the Covenants. May continues telling the story, explaining that because Mary bound her soul to Lucifer, she was able to save her people and became the first link in the chain, a chain that would never be broken. As a reward, the crow granted Caleb and his followers new land, which he named Amon Town, the same name as the county May lives in. May adds that history is repeating itself. The famine has returned, crops have failed, and now the cult must choose another special girl to marry the next prophet to save Shalak Dandal once again. When Halloween arrives, meteors appear across the sky, an important celestial sign for May's cult. Detective Alex decides to use this night to execute a clever plan to locate their base. He returns to the same area where he saw the townspeople's gathering and places a camera high in a tree, making sure it's clearly visible so the sheriff will notice it. The sheriff does spot it and takes it down, not realizing that Alex has set up a tracking system. When the camera is moved, Alex's device alerts him, allowing him to trace its exact location. He immediately sets off to follow the signal. Meanwhile, Jules and May are getting ready for the Halloween party and the school dance afterward. May dresses in the same outfit as Jules, making them look like twins. Danny also gets ready for a small party at a friend's house, and Suzanne warns her not to forget her allergy injection. Once everyone heads out to their respective events, Suzanne has to stop by the hospital, and her husband goes to meet potential buyers at a business meeting. At the party, Danny walks around alone since she's still being bullied and doesn't have any friends. She wanders the neighborhood, collecting candy in her basket. Suddenly, she meets someone dressed as a scarecrow who offers her candy. She takes one piece and eats it, then decides to head home on her own. On the way, it becomes clear that the candy contained peanuts, to which she's severely allergic. She frantically searches for her injection, but can't find it. Struggling to breathe, she finally makes it home and finds the injector in her bag. But before she can use it, she collapses and loses consciousness. Meanwhile, at the high school Halloween party, Jules and May are standing with Sebastian, while Helen, as usual, keeps her distance. Jules notices that Sebastian seems interested in May, and even asks her to dance. Despite knowing that Jules likes him, May accepts, and the two start dancing together, completely ignoring Jules, who ends up standing alone again, isolated and heartbroken. Then, a stranger approaches Jules, introducing himself as a graduate who just came to look around and see familiar faces. At that same time, Detective Alex finally locates the place where the cult rituals are being held. He spots a man dressed in the crow feather robe and manages to capture his face on camera. He watches as they slaughter a pig and place its flesh inside a strange, ancient-looking machine that crushes it like an offering. The members chant about breaking the chain, while performing the ritual. Back at the party, the event ends, and May leaves with Sebastian, while Jules refuses to go with them and stays behind, alone. The same man who spoke to her earlier offers her a ride home, and she agrees. Helen, meanwhile, returns home with one of her friends, only to find the front door open. She rushes inside and discovers Danny unconscious on the floor. Panicking, she immediately calls for help and takes her to the hospital. At that moment, Suzanne's husband is sitting at a bar when he suddenly receives a phone call that completely shocks him. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Danny is rushed in as doctors call urgently for Suzanne. When Suzanne sees her daughter lying there, fighting for her life, she breaks down in horror. At the same time, her husband arrives home, only to find their house engulfed in flames. Elsewhere, Jules realizes something isn't right with the man who offered her a ride. He starts talking strangely, saying he's taking her where she belongs. He drives her out to a remote field surrounded by farms and tells her to sit on the truck's tailgate. Pointing to the sky, he tells her that meteors will appear tomorrow and that he could take her to watch them. Jules, thinking he's just flirting, smiles shyly until he takes her hand and draws a strange symbol on it, saying it's a keepsake from him, and reveals his name, Noah. Back at the hospital, Suzanne stays by Danny's side as May and Helen arrive, while Jules is still missing, leaving everyone worried. Later that night, they all return home, and Suzanne confronts her husband after learning that the house has burned down. Furious, she tells him he wasted all their savings on that place, that she's been working extra shifts for 2 years just to keep the family afloat, and that he should have been with the kids instead of drinking. Her husband snaps back, accusing her of acting like her work is more important than his. Suddenly, Jules arrives home, apologizing for being late, and goes straight to her room to sleep. The next morning, May prepares breakfast while Jules excitedly tells her about the guy she met, clearly happy but distant, still hurt by May abandoning her at the dance. Then May notices the symbol drawn on Jules's hand and freezes in fear. She immediately realizes that her brother plans to abduct Jules. May tries to warn her, begging her not to see Noah again. But Jules assumes May is jealous and bitter, saying, "You've already got Sebastian. Why can't you just leave me something?" before walking away. Terrified, May runs into the forest, finds a specific type of flower, and rushes back home. There, she runs into Suzanne's husband, who angrily questions her about her involvement in the fire, accusing her cult of burning the house down to take her back. May drops to her knees, clings to his legs, and starts muttering strange chants as if praying or casting a plea for forgiveness. Disturbed, he pulls away from her and storms out, leaving her trembling on the floor. At home, May places the special flower into Jules's plate, intending to make her sleepy so she won't leave the house. But Jules refuses to eat, and Suzanne's husband ends up taking the plate instead. Jules then sneaks out to meet Noah, unaware of the danger she's in. May follows her in panic, pleading with her to come back and explaining that Noah wants to take her. Jules, confused, asks why they want May to return home so badly. May hesitates and simply says it's because her father is sick. Meanwhile, at the police station, Detective Alex and his assistant analyze the photos he took of the cult members. He recalls the strange machine he saw during their ritual, the one where they placed animal meat and a thick, oily substance dripped out of it. His assistant suggests that the material could be something used to make soap, glycerin, or animal fat, all of which are highly flammable. She searches online and confirms that the substance could indeed act as a fire accelerant. That revelation makes Alex remember an old case involving Eric, the man who escaped from the cult. He recalls that Eric once lived in a halfway house for addicts and homeless people near the border of Amman town, where a mysterious fire had broken out years ago. The owner of the farmhouse grew poppies used to make drugs, and the house contained several chemical materials. So the police were never able to determine the cause of the blaze. But Alex has always suspected that the fire was caused by an animal-based accelerant, the same kind the cult might have been making. The only survivor from that fire was a man named James, who later became somewhat of a local legend. Determined to learn more, Alex visits James in person, but James acts nervous, denying any knowledge of the house, its owner, or Eric's connection to a satanic cult. His evasive behavior makes Alex certain he's hiding something. Back at the hospital, Suzanne tries to find out more about Eric on her own. She secretly uses the receptionist's access card to enter the hospital's database and read patient files. But the receptionist reports her, and Suzanne is called in to meet with the head psychiatrist. During the meeting, Suzanne admits that she only wanted to help May, and that she feels responsible for her now, emotionally and morally, as if May were her own daughter. The psychiatrist wants to understand why Suzanne is so emotionally attached to May and begins gently trying to draw out her past. Suzanne looks down at her hand, where an old burn scar is visible, and slowly begins to talk about her mother and stepfather, who constantly abused them over the smallest things. The story flashes back to Suzanne's childhood home. Her stepfather, Dennis, was a police officer, the same man who once chased her through the woods with a dog, this forcing her to climb a tree in fear. Suzanne explains that as she grew older, Dennis continued to abuse both her and her mother relentlessly. One day, he handcuffed her to a radiator and turned up the heat. The metal cuffs burned into her wrists as she screamed for her mother to help, but her mother was too terrified to confront him. That day, Suzanne realized she had to escape if she wanted to survive. She waited until the night Dennis got drunk, begged her mother to run away with her, but her mother refused, saying she couldn't leave him, that she had no one else. Suzanne says Dennis had complete control over her mother's mind, always convincing her that everything was her fault, that the punishment was deserved. Eventually, Suzanne escaped on her own, started a new life in another city, got married, and had children. The psychiatrist listens and gently analyzes her story, explaining that while part of Suzanne's mother wasn't to blame, since she was also a victim of abuse, another part was responsible for choosing a violent man and forcing her daughter to live with him. She tells Suzanne that her conscious mind knows she was just a child who couldn't protect herself, but deep down, she's still angry at her mother for never protecting her. And that anger, she explains, is why Suzanne is now overprotective of May. She's subconsciously trying to fix what her mother failed to do. Suzanne realizes the doctor is right, but doesn't want to admit it. She thanks her and leaves quietly. Elsewhere in the city, Noah arrives at the meeting place for his date with Jules, but she's not there. He realizes May must have warned her and drives back home. There, he tells his father what happened and apologizes for failing to kidnap Jules. His father appears frail and sick, or perhaps performing some sort of ritual connected to medical tubes with blood transfusions flowing through them. Back in the city, Suzanne returns home and apologizes to her husband, saying she was just under a lot of stress. He tells her what May did earlier that day and admits he's deeply uncomfortable having May in the house. He says she's made everyone uneasy and wants Suzanne to send her away. May overhears the argument and feels heartbroken, realizing how much pain her presence has caused the family. Suzanne, conflicted, tells her husband she'll look for a safe home for May first. She goes to May's room to check on her. Her husband suddenly starts feeling dizzy. It's from the flour May secretly put in the soup, which makes him fall into a deep sleep. That night, Suzanne stays awake, lost in her thoughts and painful childhood memories, absent-mindedly touching the burn scar on her wrist until she eventually falls asleep. The next morning, May continues her rituals, smearing her own blood on the tree trunk. It's Harvest Day, an official celebration for the entire town. Suzanne takes out her old dress so Helen can wear it, but Helen doesn't want to. May kindly offers to alter it to fit her, but Helen refuses. Moments later, Teddy, Helen's boyfriend, arrives and confronts her about ignoring him. Helen coldly tells him she doesn't want to continue their relationship, walks away and goes back inside the house. At that moment, Suzanne receives a call informing her that a suitable home has been found for May. She tells May the good news, assuring her she'll live a happy life there and that they'll provide her with everything she needs. May pretends to be happy, smiling faintly, but deep down, she's devastated. She doesn't want to leave Suzanne. Later that morning, Suzanne's daughters head off to school, and Detective Alex arrives at the house. He tells Suzanne about his recent encounter with the priest and how he feels the man is hiding something important. Alex asks Suzanne to try speaking with the priest herself, and she agrees. That night, Suzanne and Alex drive together to the church. While elsewhere, Suzanne's husband is summoned for questioning about the house fire. The police suspect he might have started it himself, since he had recently turned down an offer to sell the house and had requested an additional extension from the bank before they foreclosed on the property, raising suspicions of financial motive. He tries to convince the investigator of his innocence, but she keeps him in custody until his lawyer arrives. Meanwhile, at the church, Suzanne and Alex find the priest and begin speaking with him. Suzanne asks if he knows anyone named Eric, and the moment the name leaves her lips, the priest freezes, visibly shaken. Without saying a word, he quickly turns and walks away. Suzanne calls after him again, this time shouting his name, Eric! He stops in his tracks, turns around nervously, and tries to flee through a side door, but Alex blocks his path. Cornered, the priest finally confesses the truth. He is Eric. He tells them about the day he escaped from the satanic cult, explaining that his title within the group had been the Lantern, a symbolic name meaning the light that delivers punishment to sinners in the name of the cult. But in reality, the so-called punishments were nothing more than ritual murders disguised as acts of faith. Eric explains that the cult used to carry out its revenge by setting fires using glycerin extracted from pig fat produced on their own farm. One day, they sent him on a mission to burn down a house known for growing and manufacturing drugs. But when he arrived, he discovered there were young people living inside, and he couldn't bring himself to kill them. So he returned to the cult and confessed that he couldn't complete the task. In response, they beat him over the head and dragged him back to the same house, intending to burn him alive there as punishment. He continues, saying that the entire operation was ordered by May's father, the cult's leader. Suzanne asks how he managed to change his identity afterward. Eric explains that when he woke up, he was in a hospital, with the nurses calling him James, because a wallet with that name had been found near him. He took it as a sign from God, an opportunity to start over, repent for his sins, and dedicate his life to the true faith. From that moment on, he chose to live as Father James, helping others find salvation and stay away from darkness. Suzanne then tells him about May, the pentagram mark on her back, and the cult's plan to sacrifice her in a ritual similar to Mary's. James reveals that the mark means the person is afflicted, chosen to be purified by Lucifer's fire. He explains that Mai is destined to be burned alive, just like Mary was. He tells Suzanne that the truth about Mary's sacrifice is much darker than the cult teaches. In reality, Mary never volunteered. She was forced into it. She had refused to marry Caleb, her late husband's brother, and out of jealousy and resentment, Caleb spread lies, convincing the cult that Mary was the chosen one. He told them that she had offered herself as a sacrifice to save them, and they burned her alive in the name of faith. That story became the foundation myth of the cult, used to control and manipulate its followers, ensuring they would obey and repeat the rituals without question. James warned Suzanne that the ritual always takes place during the full moon, which, terrifyingly, is that very night. Realizing May is in immediate danger and the cult may already be planning to abduct her, Suzanne panics. She rushes to her car and drives as fast as she can toward the location of the cult's gathering, while Alex returns to the police station to prepare backup and coordinate a response. At the station, Alex learns that Suzanne's husband is still being held for questioning. He meets with the lead detective and explains everything he's uncovered. He tells her she must have already found traces of an animal-based accelerant in the forensic report. Shocked, the detective asks how he knows that. Alex reveals that it was the Dodd family who burned down the house, as revenge against Suzanne for protecting their daughter, May, from being taken back into the cult. The detective is horrified and warns Alex that this particular cult is dangerous. They have powerful allies in high government positions, and confronting them directly could be lethal. Still, Alex insists on acting. He meets with Suzanne's husband and urges him to go home immediately to be with his family. Meanwhile, at the Harvest Festival, May is crowned Harvest Queen, holding a bouquet of flowers in her hands. But the moment the flowers touch her fingers, she's hit by vivid flashbacks, memories of herself performing an old ritual, standing in the same position, holding the same kind of flowers. Jules, watching from afar, instantly recognizes the look in May's eyes. The same dissociative trance that happens whenever she sees one of the cult's sacred symbols or when she's triggered by fear. Realizing May is in danger, Jules rushes toward her to snap her out of it. But when she reaches the stage, May is gone, vanished completely. At the same time, Suzanne is driving fast toward the festival when a car suddenly crashes into her from behind, spinning her off the road. She loses consciousness for a moment. When she wakes up, dazed and bleeding, she pushes herself back into the car and speeds toward the fairgrounds. Arriving there, she learns that May has disappeared. Desperate, she decides to find and rescue her on her own. Suzanne orders Jules to return home and call her father while she goes after May. Back at the Dodd estate, May's father prepares for the final ritual. He performs a bloody ceremony inside the old church, waiting for May to arrive. When she does, she's brought to the altar, and the cult begins chanting as the flames of the ritual torches flicker around her. Suzanne manages to sneak inside the building, her heart racing as she sees May standing at the center of the ritual circle. Suddenly, the sheriff spots her and lunges forward, attacking her from behind. But when Suzanne sees the handcuffs hanging from his belt, it triggers a traumatic flashback of her stepfather Dennis handcuffing her to the radiator. Overcome with rage and adrenaline, Suzanne fights back fiercely, attacking the sheriff with the strength of years of buried pain, as if she were fighting Dennis himself. She manages to break free, but in the struggle, she accidentally knocks over a burning torch, sending it crashing to the ground behind her. At that moment, May's father and the rest of the cult gather around a high wooden platform where May is to be burned alive. The crowd encircles the structure, chanting in unison as May and her mother ascend the platform together. Just as the ritual is about to begin, flames erupt. The church is on fire. Panic spreads as May's father and the others rush to extinguish it, leaving May and her mother behind. Suzanne appears, climbing toward the platform to rescue May, but May's mother blocks her path. In the chaos, May suddenly jumps off the platform, and Suzanne dives after her. As they hit the ground, Noah emerges from behind and attacks Suzanne, but May grabs a piece of wood and strikes him from behind, knocking him unconscious. Meanwhile, Detective Alex discovers that Suzanne is in Amontown and races toward the county. When he arrives, the sheriff confronts him, pointing a gun at his head. Alex reacts first, shooting the sheriff and ending his life. Inside, the fire spreads rapidly, and May and Suzanne manage to escape the burning church just in time. Outside, they find Alex waiting and jump into his car. Behind them, May's mother makes the ultimate sacrifice, offering herself in May's place, stepping into the fire willingly and dying in the flames by her own choice. 2 weeks later, life has changed. Suzanne decides to let May live with her permanently, feeling that she can finally protect her and give her the family she never had. But her husband disagrees. He can't handle the chaos anymore and moves out with their daughters, renting a small apartment of his own. Despite the pain, Suzanne's relationship with her 3 girls gradually improves, and she begins to heal. Therapy helps her confront her past and find peace. She lives quietly with May, feeling happy and fulfilled, believing that by saving May, she somehow saved herself too. Meanwhile, Alex is promoted for his work in exposing a network of mysterious arson cases linked to the cult's illegal rituals, even though no solid evidence was ever found. He's given full clearance to investigate Amontown, but when he returns there, the entire area is abandoned. The Dodds and all their followers have vanished. As he searches, he finds a strange car hidden near the edge of the forest. He runs the license plate and asks his assistant to trace the owner. Moments later, he receives shocking news. Alex immediately calls Suzanne and asks, "Do you know anyone named Teddy?" She replies, "Yes, he was my daughter Helen's boyfriend. Why?" Alex tells her that May switched the flowers at the Harvest Festival, the ones used during the crowning ceremony, with white roses, a sacred symbol of the cult. He explains that May had fooled everyone, making them believe the cult had tried to take her back, when in fact, she had returned to Montown on her own, stealing Teddy's car keys and driving back there to complete something. Alex admits he doesn't know why she did it, but he thought Suzanne deserved to know. Shocked and heartbroken, Suzanne hangs up the phone. Across the room, May watches her silently, realizing the truth has been exposed. With a trembling smile, she softly asks Suzanne to sit with her and share dinner, trying to hold on to the only person she has left. In the final scene, the camera drifts through the dark forest to the tree trunk where May once performed her rituals. The ground around it is covered in ropes, feathers, and bones, forming strange patterns. On the bark, there's now a small makeshift shrine, a cutout photo of young Suzanne placed beside a photo of May, glued together as if bound by a spell. The 2 faces rest side by side beneath the carved pentagram, a chilling charm ensuring they will never be separated. The screen fades to black. End of series.